The scapegoat and the golden child becoming close is almost unheard of. And the fact that we have a younger brother who sees the family abuse clearly and is in a healing journey as well is another level of it. I think it shows our strength. It shows the ability to get through this. I'm really proud of it. Hello, truth tellers. Welcome back to the ADHD Scapegoat podcast, where we talk about everything ADHD and scapegoating. I'm Angie, and today we have a very special guest, my big sister, Val. So Jeremy's hanging with the kids, so we have time to record this, and she's in town after Thanksgiving. We're recording this a little bit ahead of time. So what are we going to talk about today, Val?
Well, in today's episode, we are going to discuss dysfunctional family roles, unspoken rules in a narcissistic family, and have we been working through our healing.
Awesome. So let's talk about it.
All right.
So first, explaining and naming some of the narcissistic family roles. I know I mentioned in a couple other episodes, obviously ADHD Scapegoat in the title, I'm the scapegoat. And if you research different narcissistic resources, they list, the top roles that are discussed, and there's some sub roles within there, is the narcissist, the enabler, the scapegoat, the golden child, and the lost child. And there's a couple others like the mascot or...
and there's 5 kids in the family. And so it feels like when you read these things, it's like, oh yeah, that fits.
Right.
Right.
Yeah, we were able to, obviously first kind of discovering that that's what we were raised in, because we just kind of knew it as...
Well, yeah, when you're growing up, it just feels like this is your life, this is your family, and this is how things are. Right. And everybody has a little bit of that in their family. Like You have Christmas traditions and you think, oh, you don't do that? I thought that's whatever. There's a point in your life where you realize that, oh, this is different than other families. And so, yeah.
It just became really clear, and it was kind of crazy to just go boom, boom, boom. Like we could immediately
when people started talking about this.
Right.
Yeah. And I never would have labeled that like the narcissistic family. I never would have labeled it that, but seeing how it really plays out, it fits.
Right.
So,
yeah. Yeah. When it lines up like that, it's pretty, I don't know, you can't unsee it.
Yeah. There's a lot of that.
Yeah. Which we talked about before. It's like,
once you see it, you can't unsee it.
Right.
Yeah.
So I've talked about before, our father's the head narcissist, mother is the enabler. I'm the scapegoat. She was the golden child.
Yeah.
And our younger sister is the lost child. And so I kind of want to talk about how, what actually the, kind of the definition of the scapegoat, this is just one definition that I pulled from Julie Hall. She's a narcissist expert who has a website, the Narcissistic Family Files. And she has a ton of great information on there. Definitely look her up. But she lists the scapegoat is the child singled out unfairly for disfavored treatment in a narcissistic family. Scapegoats are typically blamed for family problems, disciplined or punished disproportionately, burdened with excessive chores and responsibilities, and subjected to unmerited negative treatment. Whereas the golden child, do you want to read your golden child definition?
Sure. This is a child singled out for favoritism, such as special privilege, more attention, high regard, exemption from discipline, which that I feel like that one doesn't really fit our family. Everybody was disciplined harshly and fairly. And like for you, I don't think you got extra chores for the scapegoat thing. I don't think that was like you got extra stuff. I don't know.
I never got exempt from them. I never got to earn my way out of them.
Okay.
So, but it wasn't...
Everybody had chores. Yeah. And so like exemptions from discipline, I don't think that really fits. But in exemption from chores and responsibilities. That doesn't really fit, I don't think. But such favoritism is typically at the direct expense of a disfavored, scapegoated child. So, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I was definitely the favorite. Like, it was known by everyone that I was my dad's favorite.
And we were very clearly pitted against each other.
Yeah.
And, you know, being that I was younger than you, that's kind of what I thought it was initially, was just like, oh, my big sister's smarter than me and faster than me and apparently better at everything than me, you know, in our family. And so I was always trying to live up to what you did and stuff. And, you know, I got to a point.
I always hated that.
Right.
Yeah, I hated that.
Right. What did you hate about it?
Well, it just felt like my accomplishments, I don't think I've ever verbalized this before, but my accomplishments weren't mine. They were something to be lorded over someone else, right? And so, like, when I did something good, or like, I mean, I was a track runner, so, and I loved it. But when I did something good, I should have felt good about it, but it was more like I wanted to hide because I knew that it would get me this attention that was then lorded over you. And like, I didn't feel like it was a good thing. It was more like,
it was expected.
Know where I'm going. Yeah, well, when it was it was expected for sure. If I didn't do well, then I would get in trouble. But it just never felt good because of the cloud it would put over you. And like, I remember people would, I've always had blonde hair. We always look very similar.
Yeah, this so just kind of happened. You just colored your hair right now. It's so funny.
But people would think we were the same person, and that always bothered me because we weren't the same person. And then I was worried that it was bothering you, that was upsetting you, and then you wouldn't like me. And it just didn't feel, I don't know, it just didn't feel good. Didn't feel good.
Well, I feel like it always came, because being the older sister, like, you would be the one who was seen more often because you had been out playing sports longer.
2 more years.
Yeah. So I would always get we've seen Val run for the last however many years. So, oh my gosh, that's Val, you know. And so I would always be called Val. And I would kind of laugh it off and be like, nope, I know we look alike, but we're not the twins in the family, you know.
Yeah.
And so I just got annoyed that people never
recognized that you're a different person.
That I was a different person, But yeah, I think for me, it just always felt like I was pitted against you. And I even got the message, and I don't know if it was spoken in so many words of, you know, your sister's better than you or anything, but it was just little things like, yeah, your sister wouldn't do that. Or watch what your sister does. She's not getting in trouble. She's not doing this, or, you know.
And for me, it was be a good example for your younger siblings. So, you know, stay on this path and don't veer off because everyone's watching you. So I think that's, I mean, I don't know. I think it was pretty common back then, maybe.
Yeah, and I think it is, like, you want, like, at least with our kids, we want the older siblings to be a good example, but I don't approach it in a pressuring way of, like, you know, watch what you do because of your siblings. It's like, make kind choices, make choices that you'll be proud of because you'll be proud of yourself, and it will naturally flow into your younger siblings because that's how you're leading by example.
Yeah. And I think that's one of the things that having kids has been really eye-opening. Like, there's just these little shifts in perspective that it's like, okay, you can do the same thing but do it with love, rather than with this, like, you know, like, I just think about, like, I don't think he ever hit us with objects. No. But I just think of like, the teacher with the ruler, like, you better do this or else, and I was always worried about the or else, rather than like, do this because you'll feel good about it,
Right.
Yeah. And it's just like a little shift that would make it feel better rather than like always terrified of doing the wrong thing.
Right.
Yeah.
I think, and that's the whole thing is like the narcissistic sets up these roles in the family to lead in almost a militaristic way of fear-based. There are repercussions, there's criticism. Like, even when you're saying, when I did well, I was expected to do well. We're all expected to do well. But it wasn't like when you did well, you were celebrated.
No.
So even as the golden child, it wasn't like you were celebrated.
No.
And it's also, and I brought this up in an earlier podcast that I talk about when I ran the 400 meter hurdles. And with undiagnosed ADHD, the meet got moved around. I told that whole story on a previous episode. And if it's not just like you do it, you get an A, you win the race, it's you also have to do it the way he says you do. There's his way or the highway. That whole saying is like very accurate. And, no one's opinion matters but his in any place in our house.
Yeah.
So, that kind of leads me to the list that Julie Hall has on her website. It's called The 12 Unspoken Rules of Engagement in a Narcissistic Family. So basically, this is a way to see, if you're evaluating or you're thinking that any of these things resonate. I think a lot of times it's hard to explain to outsiders what we've been through or things we experienced. And there's the whole idea, again, if you listen to Narcissistic Information Anywhere, death by 1,000 paper cuts, because each thing individually, or even how we had to present perfect in public, like everything was fine. There's the idea that if we went and complained about it, not only was there possibly a smear campaign, well, at least in my case, there was a smear campaign ahead of me anyway, like warning people if I speak out that I'm a crazy liar. Don't believe her. She's being dramatic, all of that. But there's also the, well, that doesn't seem so bad if you say something. That doesn't seem so bad. Or, maybe they meant well. Or, oh, that's all that you're complaining about? You seem pretty upset about something small. But it's like, no, that happens every day. And when they're unspoken, it's just like, I think that's a lot of the reason the lost child falls into that role is she saw how I was treated. So she didn't want to be treated like that. You also, same thing, right? Saw how I was treated, stayed in line, walked your tightrope so that you didn't fall into the treatment that I received. So being an unspoken rule, which is another way that they can kind of, get out of saying, I didn't tell them directly, you have to hate your sister.
Right. Yeah.
But they did in a bunch of different ways. So there are unspoken rules that you just learn. And kids, especially when we're younger, with wanting our attachment to our parents and like wanting the connection, especially the way I wanted my connection to my siblings, it was so threatening to my dad for me to have a connection with my siblings, because then they would know their worth. They would maybe they'd be empowered to stand up for themselves. Maybe they would take my side, and go against him. And so he needed to like always keep us separate. So these are some of the unspoken rules, and we'll kind of go through them and see what we find here. Yeah. So the first one is acceptance is conditional.
And love too. I don't know if that
right.
That falls under that same. And I always felt that, like, love is conditional, like 100%.
Right.
Like unconditional love. I did not understand it.
Right.
Yeah.
I did not understand it, but it didn't feel like when I saw my friends with their parents, I was like, oh,
yeah,
what's that about?
Yeah.
And it didn't really make sense, but I was like, yeah, I love my parents. It doesn't look or feel like that. It was
Yeah.
very weird.
Yeah.
But
And conditional, just like, walk this tightrope or you won't be loved. And like, I think the reason I was the golden child was because I was really good at walking that tightrope. And I was good at walking the tightrope, so I was the golden child. But what I got from that was I just suppressed everything. So all of my feelings and all of like really who I am as a person got stuffed down so far that like, I'm 44 years old, and just a couple years ago, I started to like sort of kind of figure out who I am, and I'm still figuring it out, and I think I will forever be figuring it out.
Yeah.
But as the scapegoat and like having ADHD, she wasn't able to stuff things down. Like that just didn't work for her and her body.
Nope.
And so she said all of the things. And so she didn't get that like internal hatred, but she got hatred from other people. So it's been interesting talking about it.
Now, yeah.
Yeah. Like how you would think that I would have felt loved as the golden child, but that's
right.
not.
And I think that's a good point to bring up. Like, just because on the outside it looks like the golden child had it better, it's still a manipulation. It's still a role given to you that's not your choice. It's not who you are. It doesn't define you. And, that's kind of why I, named this the ADHD Scapegoat, is to kind of turn it on its head, because it was a label I was given, but it was a label that there's a different shift to it when it's coming from me, and I'm sharing what that actually looks like rather than being given in a negative connotation. And although I didn't internalize it, there were times where I just felt so beaten down that I would think, well, maybe I am the problem.
Literally and
Yeah.
figuratively.
So any differences, they're rejected, and you just need to fall in line. You need to do things like this. And here's the thing, it wasn't explained either. It was just, you had to do it. How do you not know how to do it? So you're like treated as an adult when you're a kid, like you're supposed to do these things. There's no grace for growing up and making mistakes or any of that. But we'll get to that. But do you know what I mean? It's like, do it this way, but I'm not going to show you how to do it this way. And I'm not going to allow you to mess up, not once.
Right. Yeah.
The second one is submission is required.
Are we going to be able to get through 12?
I know, seriously, we might.
Submission is required, yeah. There was no stepping out of the box.
Yeah, and
my way or the highway. Like I remember distinctly remember a situation when I was in 5th grade, and I wanted to wear my hair a certain way, and my dad was not having it. And it's like, if you don't like it, you can find somewhere else to live. Because I wanted to wear my hair a certain way. And
5th grade's like 10.
Yeah.
10 years old.
And so I felt that he was very serious about that. And so really thinking about this, okay, am I going to be able, and we moved around a bunch as kids. So can I find another place to live? I don't think so. So I better walk that line. And so that was a very pivotal, they talk about these pivotal moments in a kid's life, and it was just a Tuesday for the narcissist. That was a very pivotal point where I was like, okay, I have to, and I don't think I made the decision then to get out and get as far away as possible, but that was a feeling from very early on. I wanted to go away. I wanted to go to college. I wanted to go away to college. I said someplace warm, because where we grew up is not warm. And I knew that would have to be far away. Right. So it was these things. And yeah, I don't know.
I think it's hard, the submission required, because you too saw that you weren't accepted in that moment.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But it wasn't an outward you know, the way it came at me with the submission is like, I wasn't going to submit and I would talk back. So I was just perpetually grounded.
Yeah.
So the third one is someone must be blamed for the problems. That's me.
Yeah.
So when something bad happens, it says from a lost job to a spilled glass of milk, someone must be blamed for it. So basically, yeah, it.
And, you know, I think sometimes our older brother was also the scapegoat, you know, like, because he wasn't as good at walking that tightrope as I was. He was a little bit more rebellious, which kids are, you know. But he would be made an example of, or they would make an example of him. And so sometimes he was the scapegoat. It wasn't always you.
Yeah. At different times, it definitely would be. So the fourth one is vulnerability is dangerous. So as we said, mistakes, accidents, weaknesses, even ones you take responsibility for, there's shaming in that. Yeah. So vulnerability is, I don't know, it was unheard of. Like, I really had to learn what it was.
Yeah.
After I got my diagnosis, and I still, up until about 4 years ago, I was vulnerable with unsafe people, to my own detriment, just because I still came from this place of, why would anyone treat someone poorly? Like, there's no reason. And if we're family, you want a connection too. Like, we're adults, we should have connections. And it's just not reality. So
it's funny because I remember, like, growing up, and I moved very far away when I was 18 and moved farther away when I was 22. And you stayed close. And I always remember thinking, like, why is she so interested in having a relationship with all the, like, why is she so, like, it really confused me because you were so, like, disregarded and, like, you were the butt of every joke, and
a lot of these things I didn't know until these last couple of years too.
I mean, you knew some of it.
I knew a certain amount. Yeah. Like, I had a general feeling of how everyone felt about me, right?
Yeah.
Like, my intuition knew that nobody liked me, but I also kind of thought, well, we're family. They must love me.
Yeah.
You know, they're just
craving that connection. For sure.
Yeah. And I think it's part of it was like, I never got that. Part of it was, a lot of my confidence, because when I still lived around home, I still wasn't diagnosed. So I was still struggling with, like, what was happening for me.
Yeah.
So 5, you must take sides.
Yeah.
There are always sides. There's always sides. You have to pick one. And if you don't take his side, you're wrong.
Yeah, it's very black and white, no gray.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
And I love gray. Like, that's where I live now, and I love it.
Right. I love through healing, understanding that two things can be true at once.
Yeah.
And, you know,
it also helps, like, that also helps me looking back and, like, how I treated you. Like, two things can be true at once. Like, I was, when you would get beat up or whatever by our older brother, or criticized or ridiculed by our father, I would be like, well, she didn't follow that line, so she kind of deserved it, like Ange. And I would tell her. She remembers me telling her, like,
you won't get grounded if you just do what they say. I'm like, no, I'll still get grounded. You don't understand. You won't get grounded if you do what they say.
I'm like, just
I'll still get grounded.
Yeah. And so I was like, well, she's not doing what they say, so she kind of deserves it. But we've talked about it quite a bit, and you know, I was surviving in one way and she was surviving in another way. So,
and that's the thing. I think when you become an adult and you try to open up and have these honest conversations, you very quickly see who's willing to grow and understand, and who wants to have a connection with you and who doesn't.
Yeah.
Okay, let's get to 6. There is never enough love and respect to go around.
I didn't really feel like there was love at all.
Yeah, I just didn't feel like there was any.
I mean, every once in a while, maybe. Yeah.
But yeah, it was very fleeting.
So if one person is being put up on a pedestal, then that means everyone else is below.
Right. There's definitely a direct correlation made. Okay, 7. Feelings are wrong. Oh, yeah. Feelings and emotions don't exist even now. Your feelings don't matter.
No.
And we talk about that in another episode where I'm discussing part of the whole narrative against me from the family currently is me doing a background check. And part of the reason why I did the background check, and it's not me like, oh, there's an excuse why I did the background check. No, I'd still do the background check, plain and simple, today. But back then it was if I went to them with my feelings and my intuition and my disconnect from my younger sister being the only resource, and I hadn't researched and had a list of, detailed items, like when we would try to get ungrounded and all of that, like, wow, here's the plan, here's what we have to do. I did the background check because my feelings didn't matter. My intuition didn't matter. My connection with my sister didn't matter. And that was proven when I called my older brother, and he immediately told me, she never has to talk to you again. You're selfish for wanting a relationship with her. It's so like, huh?
Yeah.
It doesn't make sense. But your feelings don't matter. So if you have a feeling or if you're uncomfortable with something, so what? Suck it up. The real world's going to eat you alive if you have feelings. Like, what?
Yeah.
But your feelings, here's the thing, when it comes to narcissistic abuse, your feelings, whether it's anger, whether it's sadness, whether it's frustration, it's telling you something so that you can figure out what's happening and make the best decision for yourself. And when you can't do that and your feelings are shut down and you're told to not listen to them, then he gets to make the decisions for you.
Yeah. I got into a lot of bad situations in college and probably beyond because I didn't listen to my intuition around other people. So, that's another,
Yeah. The feelings. And I think being called selfish for having feelings is, isn't that just maddening?
Yeah.
Because everyone has feelings. We talk about that too. Like, feelings, everyone has them. Some people just refuse to look at them, refuse to figure out where they're coming from, and then they keep these negative patterns.
Yeah, and you can't let feelings control you, right? Like, if I don't know, trying to think of an example. Like, if I felt like having cake every single day for breakfast, lunch, and dinner, that's not really a feeling.
Well, but
you know what I mean?
But if you're feeling angry, you don't just lash out in rage.
Right. Yeah.
You could, I'm feeling angry. What's that anger about? And just looking at it.
Just asking a simple question.
Right? Isn't it? The simple question is just nuts.
Yeah. No, you don't do that.
Okay, so 8 is competition, not cooperation, rules the day. So definitely the one up, the comparison, all of us, there was enough of us. And I don't know if that's originally why I linked myself to basketball so quickly, is because no one else really played. My brothers played, but
I did not.
They definitely liked other sports more when they played. But I was like obsessed with basketball, and I wanted to play basketball, and it set me apart, and it didn't allow for as much
comparison.
Directly. So I kind of latched onto that. But everything was a competition.
But even when you did play basketball and you were good at basketball, it was poo-pooed. It was like, oh, it's like whatever.
Right.
It's so weird.
Isn't it?
Weird looking back. Yeah.
Well, and what's crazy is, like, we've talked about, a bunch in these last couple of years, just me discovering some of the things that you as my older sister kind of protected me from, because whether it was my father or my older brother just like talking crap about me all the time, she wouldn't come to me and be like, oh, said this all about you. You would just be like, I don't need to tell her this because it doesn't even make sense. Why? Like, I'm not going to tell her because she knows I already hear it directly. So didn't want to layer on, and it didn't make any sense to her why it was being said. And the same thing to our younger brother, like things would be said to him and he wouldn't bring it to me because he was like, why is this even happening? Like, we're adults. And even when we were kids, I don't think you guys ever, told me something unless something was like coming at you. But it's kind of, I think the first, round of things that I got coming at me as an adult and like understanding this was like, it shocks you because like I said, I knew I had a general feeling that I was hated or not liked, but I didn't have the evidence, and I didn't really seek it out. I was seeking connection. I was always seeking connection. I was always forgiving them and, hoping that they would just someday understand, kind of a thing.
Yeah.
And you were really pitted against our older brother with, especially when it came to like responsibilities, like her being the oldest girl, she was more responsible for babysitting us and doing things to take care of her younger siblings at a far too young age.
I mean, 3rd and 4th grade.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And she would be pitted against him. So he would get the like whole emasculated shaming from our father that she's more responsible than you. She's younger than you. You better get your shit together.
Really good at walking that line.
Right.
Yeah.
And so part of it was like putting her on a pedestal. But again, you can't put her on a pedestal without bringing him down.
Somebody else down, yeah.
So 9, appearances are more important than substance. I mean, there was no substance in our relationships.
Yeah.
Like, we got along when we were adults, but it still felt strained.
Yeah, I didn't have a connection really with any of my family members. Until after like shit went down like 2 years ago. I just kind of kept my distance from everyone.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And again, the narrative that we were all, whether...
I thought it was childish that you wanted a connection. Actually, now thinking about it.
Really?
Yeah. It was like, yeah. Yeah. And it's weird. Some of the things that it doesn't make me look good at all. A lot of this stuff, like the golden child stuff, it's like, but that's part of what I wanted to talk about on this episode was like, we have more of a connection now because I've admitted to the things that I either thought or did or said to other people. She's not holding a grudge against me because I did these things in the past. Like, I'm opening up and I'm telling her, this is what I thought. And, this is how I felt, and I did avoid you. Like all of these different things.
Right.
And we're closer today because of it. So if anybody's feeling like, oh gosh, I can't, I could never tell my sister or my brother that I felt this way about them. You can. And they're like, it's going to be okay. For sure. Like, it's going to be okay.
Right.
Well, I don't know. It may be not. I'm always like, oh, or maybe not. It might not be okay.
Well, and I think the thing is I always wanted that connection, but there was part of me because, I mean, when you go close to 4 decades with no connection, you don't ever really expect it to happen. And so when the break in our family happened due to our younger sister's toxic relationship, we were, I had to step back and be quiet because all of my speaking out and my truth telling because of the family narrative that was already built in against me, even though the information was truthful and accurate, and yeah, maybe I was upset, maybe I was angry at times, because I'm like, oh my gosh, you guys, like, wake up. Like, I was just screaming, wake up. And I finally realized they're not misunderstanding me. They're purposefully not listening to me. There's something else going on here. And I just knew from all the therapy and all the work I had been doing through my coaching and, you know, through advocating for my son's ADHD, I was, something else is going on here. And so I remember having a discussion with you and our younger brother about, like, I'm done. I'm not saying another word. I've given them chance after chance after chance to connect, to have conversations. I'm done. I'm stepping back. And they were like, no, that's what you need to do. Right now, step back. Don't say a word, because then they can't twist and turn and blame you. So you step back, because when the scapegoat steps back, they still have to have somebody to blame.
It started to become me for a little. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Yeah. I'm.
But it became so painfully obvious to them as soon as I stepped back and they couldn't point the finger at me, and they were asked a simple question by you or by our younger brother. It blew up.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's really important to just kind of, that awareness in myself and then bringing it to them. And trust me, it felt like a risk to bring it to them still. At the time that I told them, I'm done, I'm not doing this, no one will listen to me. You guys have listened to me, but I don't think you still fully understand what's happening here. I'm done. I'm not doing this anymore. I was at risk of them going, all right, fuck you, Angie. See ya. Like, whatever. Like, pulling the whole dramatic card here. And I was like, no. I'm just done. And they immediately, I don't know if it's because of how egregious all of our sister's partner's behavior was. But
it was a gradual
Yeah, it was
thing.
gradual.
Yeah.
But it was them saying, this is unraveling. And it's very obvious since you stepped back, because they can't keep pulling the Angie said this, Angie did that, because Angie is
Not
silent
involved.
right now.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, the substance thing came after we opened up, listened to each other, and honestly wanted to understand each other's experience, because we saw glimpses of it, but we didn't fully understand each person's experience. 10 is rage is normalized. Everyone's expected to swallow and endure the dominant narcissist's irrational, explosive, and perhaps also violent rage.
Yeah, and it says this may be magnified by other forms of mental illness and or addiction. And luckily, our parents didn't drink. I think we're really lucky.
Right.
And so that piece wasn't there. But I think our father was very depressed for most of our childhood, and so that I think that has plays a big role in that. So he was depressed, not happy about anything, nothing was good enough kind of thing. It just, in his mind, like, I feel sad for him. And then he just put that on all of us too, right? Like, nothing is good enough. And I know for me as a little kid, I just wanted to make him happy. That's all I wanted. I just wanted him to be happy. So, like, walk this line, maybe he'll be happy. And he never, like, there would be like, maybe like the corner of his mouth would come up in a smile for something. And you're like, oh, that was something, right? So it's like the breadcrumbing, all of that stuff that you hear about narcissists, and how people are able to stay in relationships. Like, I mean, I was a kid, I had to stay in that relationship.
Right.
But when you're an adult and you get into relationships like that, you wonder how somebody can stay in. And it's because you're empathic. You feel for that person. You want them to be happy. Like, you just want people to be happy and feel good. And they show you that if you do these things, then I will be happy. And again, it's not said, unspoken rules, so.
Well, the rage always just felt like,
rage,
like,
that's worse.
for me, I was just always like, what is your problem? What is this even about? And I'd ask a question. What happened? That was wrong. I couldn't ask that question.
Yeah.
I should know.
Yeah.
How much was that?
Yeah.
You should know.
Yeah.
You should know what you did, or you should. I mean,
Yeah.
It didn't make sense, and if you ask a question about it, you're raged at more.
More rage.
Yeah.
So like, I was always like, oh my gosh, stop asking questions. Like, just pretend like you know what's going on.
And I was just like, you tell me.
None of it.
You tell me what you're mad about, because none of this makes sense. I'm not going to pretend I understand why you're raging at your young children, because it doesn't make sense to me. Like, I'm not going to, and I couldn't pretend. I could not do it.
Yeah, you couldn't pretend.
Just did not work. Okay, so 11 is denial is rampant. So to sustain his control, there's denial of abusive incidents, denial of it was an atmosphere of fear.
Oh my
like
gosh,
it was.
yeah.
I mean, I remember him yelling at our mom one time in the car about who knows what. And she's crying in the car. And then we had to step out and go to some function. And I feel like it was like a Bill's party at our like family friends. But I'm not totally sure. I mean, I'm sure this happened more than once, but this is the one I'm thinking of in my head. We were all in the car and she was crying. And then it was like with gritted teeth, like, get it together before we go inside. And I would see my mom like wipe up her tears, walk in and just be talking to people like a bubbly, happy as can be. And I was like, huh?
Yeah.
Like, whoa.
Yeah, the atmosphere. It was like,
you could just get a
fear,
look. Do you remember the look?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the fear was always there. Yeah, you just didn't want to step out of line. I didn't never want to step out of line because I saw my brother get kicked down the stairs because I don't remember why. I don't know if he was a couple minutes late for curfew or whatever, or talked back. Yeah.
But talking back is talking at all, trying to have a conversation, but that's another thing.
Yeah, let's be honest about that. Just living in fear. And then as an adult, it manifested as like I was terrified of making any mistakes, which means you're just paralyzed. Like
you were a perfectionist, like to the highest degree.
Yeah. Yeah.
You were so hard on yourself. And I remember at one point being like, oh, if I could just get Val to have a beer, she will just like loosen up and it'll be so fun because I feel like then she'll loosen up a little to be able to talk to me. And it wasn't like I wanted to get her drunk or anything. It was just like I saw a little bit of a release in her.
Yeah.
And
luckily I don't think I have the gene to be an addict.
Right.
But I definitely, kind of like I said earlier, I got into situations because I just wanted to not feel so constrained, not feel so fearful. So, having more alcohol than I needed.
yeah.
Not that anybody needs alcohol, but, because I wanted to not feel that fear. Yeah.
Well, and I drank a lot in different parts of my life. I constantly had that worry that people didn't like me, and that feeling that people didn't like me. And that's part of the problem of all these, these narcissistic roles being in your house, because the whole idea that was put on us was, I'm being tough on you here so you can be out in the real world, like I'm preparing you to be an adult. And that's what he would always tell my mom. If my mom tried to like comfort us at all, it was like, you're babying them. They're never going to be out and, be an adult. But it was like, no, I went out into the world thinking everyone hates me and everyone's talking about me because that's what I experienced in my home.
Yeah.
So like for me, it was like a social anxiety that I didn't realize it was social anxiety. I just thought, like, I don't want to think about all the people that are hating on me, or might be like, just being nasty and not seeing me, So I need to not think about that. If I don't drink, I'm the whole time I'm out. I can catch, like, I could sense anybody's mood, or, you know, my intuition is so strong, it's insane. But it's like having ADHD and hearing all the sounds and having that hypervigilance, I could not relax. And so it made it hard to be in social situations. And so I would do that.
But the like being very aware of everyone else, like the other person sitting across the table from you may have just like eaten bad cheese, you know? And that's why his face is all weird. But you're assuming that he's like mad at you or doesn't like you, you know? So you just think the worst of everyone. And that was a big theme of our childhood as well.
Yeah.
You know, thinking the worst of everyone. Yeah.
Right. And then denial is rampant. Another thing she lists is the ongoing mistreatment of the scapegoat. So yeah, it was like played off like we got along, but we didn't. And then the other thing she says is denial about the routine forms of neglect. And I think the emotional support neglect in our house, like our parents did the things basic, like on basic paper things that you need by law when you have children to, you know. I mean, yes, they showed up to our sporting events, but that made them look good.
True. Yeah.
And, you know, we did a lot of things on the outside that kind of would make you look good. And so, you know, they would show up and do those things. But the neglect, do you remember a time where you went to either of our parents with how you were feeling?
No.
I remember going to Mom about feeling things at different times. And I can't really pinpoint. I remember going to her, but it kind of being like, oh, okay.
Yeah.
Like there was no like, okay, do you want to talk about that
yeah.
more? Do you want to like, and well, as an adult too.
As an adult, I tried to create connection with both of my parents by talking to them about like feelings or, I don't know, just what was going on below the surface, like something other than the weather. And they were both very uncomfortable with that. So I kind of learned that that's not anywhere that they can go. So even when I did have a relationship with them, I just did it on their terms. Like it was very surface.
Well, and the funny thing is when I tried to connect with my parents as an adult, it as long as they weren't coming back at me with negativity, in my head I was like, oh, maybe like they're beginning to understand me. Maybe they're starting to understand. Yeah. Maybe they'll open up. And I had this toxic hope now. I see what it is, but yeah, I had that. But I do remember times when I was younger and my mom kind of being like, okay. Like she didn't ask any questions, didn't ask me about it later. Like things I do with my kids now where like let them know that their feelings are safe. And if they need, like, if we have to, you know, talk about something hard, which we have had to, letting them know, you know, even if, you know, if you think about this later and you have a question, if you don't have a question now, or even if you do have a question now, you can still have a question later. And if you're feeling sad about this later, you know, you can talk to me and ask me questions. And, you know, it's not going to be easy, but you're never, like, your feelings matter and your experience matters. And I want you to tell me. And, you know, I might not have all the answers, but we can talk about it.
Yeah. And whenever I think about that, I just feel sad for them because I feel like they don't have that in their life. They never experienced anyone doing that for them. They've never been able to do that for other people. And that's where you get real connection, is speaking your heart and like telling people what's on your mind and what's on your heart and them connecting with you on that level. And I'm not sure that they've ever had that. So I have a lot of empathy, sympathy for them for that.
Right.
Like, they were never taught that, and they've never felt safe enough to do that, even in close relationships.
Right.
So, yeah.
All right, Jeremy's going to have to cut this, but I have
Okay.
to let her out of here because she's kicking and being obnoxious. Go, 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 go.
And it's 4:20.
Yeah. So we're going to have to wrap
Okay.
it up soon anyway. Okay, so we'll start where we...
So 12.
Yeah, so let's go with 12. Okay, so then number 12, there is no safety. So although the scapegoat is targeted and the most outwardly and obviously abused, everyone is on hyper alert because no one is safe from the blame and the rage,
Right. Yeah.
which you
That's
talked
pretty accurate.
about.
Yeah.
And there's something that you brought up what Jeremy had asked in a previous episode. I think it was the first episode about. Do you remember sharing with your family when you were finally diagnosed with ADHD? And I was like, I don't really remember. I remember in more recent years, like talking about our oldest as I was advocating for him and stuff. And it seemed like they understood and, were supportive. They didn't argue with me about it. So
When I listened to that episode, I said, "Oh, I remember."
and I was like, oh my God, you do?
Yeah.
I want to know.
And so I also have a hard time remembering things. I think that's part of the abuse, is that I just block a lot of things out, but there are feelings that I remember. And so I do remember when you first talked about it, and I remember myself, and I want to talk about like how I felt. And partly because the groundwork was laid, it was like, oh, she finally has an excuse for all of her bad behavior. Like, oh, she found a doctor who could prescribe some drugs and tell her what was wrong with her. And that was the sentiment of the other family members that I remember talking to. So I don't remember if that was my initial response or if that was what other people said, and then that's how I felt after, like, I talked to other people about it. So it was still, you were like almost 30.
It was 28,
and it was
yeah.
still like people were trying to discredit you and put you down. And
none of the first, when you just even hinted at that before we got on to do the episode, I had never known that.
yeah. And so, like, I mean, like I said earlier, there's a lot of this stuff that does not make me sound really good, because I was on that, in that camp, but Angie has helped me see that it was my survival to be in that camp. That's how I, like, walking that tightrope was how I made it through. And so I've been doing a lot of work forgiving myself for those things, which is hard, but hard work, but good work,
Right.
It's like, it really goes into healing that, like, I'm not perfect, right?
Right.
Obviously, none of us are. And like doing these things to Angie or feeling these ways about Angie, I'm going to take responsibility for them because that was me. And also understanding what the foundation was there, and acknowledging, like, okay, that was how I felt. I do feel differently now, and kind of moving forward with you in a different, more positive, and, like, hopefully when we talk now, you realize I ask more questions, and
Right.
like, yeah, it's like, I want to know about her experience.
And I do feel like throughout my childhood and adulthood, I had already formed before this family rupture happened. I think even when they got this message to disconnect, or, Angie's dramatic, kind of the idea, like, take everything she says as like, well, I'll do, I'll do my research on what you said because you can't believe her. Even though they had that, I think they also were able to see that I was constantly trying to connect and I genuinely cared about them. So that is another part in which I think it was easier for you as an adult, as you're going in and healing some of these things, to see that was always there. That, like, even though there was that narrative that I was lying, you're like, I don't know, like, that doesn't add up to, like, how she behaved and how she treated me. And me and my younger brother always, like, we got along pretty well, and people would always say that they thought we were the twins because me, you, and him looked the most alike. Yeah. And so, him being 2 years younger than me, we kind of would hang out with the same people and in different groups. And so we always kind of got along, and we were always both kind of outgoing and kind of loud, but there still wasn't, like, the connection like we have now. Yeah. It was still, like, fairly surface. And I had told you, originally when we finally discussed a bunch of stuff, how I felt safe with you, but I still wasn't at the point of feeling safe with him because he was still getting a lot of the negative messaging from our older brother. And so I needed to, like, build more, we had to have more opportunities to build the trust between us. And, and since he's moved away from home and married his wife, is wonderful. Human, yeah. And he's much more able to, to see this stuff. And he too has looked back and, he's apologized to me. I'm like, you don't need to apologize. Like, I know you were surviving too, but he's like, no, I just can't, like, it didn't make sense to me and I don't know why, and I think that's how we kind of want to end this, is like this, the stuff that we're doing to heal. I guess it's simple in the sense of it doesn't take a lot to just ask someone a question and to, try to understand a perspective that's different than yours, or, stand back and just want to understand what someone else has gone through. But and it might be tough, and there might be things that come up that, like, you're not proud of. Like you said, you're not necessarily proud of a certain way you behaved, and I sure didn't at certain points. But I also know it was a mistake, and now that I know better, I'm doing better. And once I see things more clearly, I think having those hard conversations has allowed us to actually open up and support each other more.
And I think that goes in it's stark contrast to how we grew up, was if you made a mistake, you are a bad person.
Yeah.
And so that piece of it, like, I don't feel like that. I don't feel that anymore at all. Like, I know we feel differently about our family members that we don't talk to now. And for me, it's like, if they said, and maybe you feel this, I don't know, if they said, hey, I don't know, my eyes were closed for whatever reason, my eyes are now open and I see everything that happened, I would like to try to have a relationship with you. I would cautiously, like, tiptoe back into that, because I really feel like we all have the potential and the ability to change. And, do I think it's going to happen? Probably not. But yeah, it just goes back to, like, mistakes. Everybody makes mistakes. And if we can love each other through those mistakes and understand each other and know like, oh, Angie made this mistake, but she's not a bad person. I made this mistake, but I'm not a bad person. I'm going to make a mistake tomorrow and I'm not a horrible human.
Right.
And like that kind of
Carrying that
has
shame.
helped. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. I think understanding that when you live out of a place of shame and you refuse to do any self-reflection and understand what role you played, and even for me, the role I played was constantly craving this connection and giving them more opportunities to harm me.
Yeah.
And once I was able to protect myself from that and see how much I benefited from protecting myself from that and not constantly feed into someone who, you know, isn't giving anything back and who's actually, it's not even just not giving it. And I've said this to you a bunch of times. If you don't like me, just leave me alone. Just leave me alone. It can't happen.
Yeah.
Like they have to badmouth me and say all these horrible things about me and it's just, it doesn't make any sense. So why should I attempt to do that? And like you said, I don't think I would necessarily, I have a lot of trust is broken.
Yeah.
There's been a lot of damage done. And I think the more time goes on and they keep sticking to this attitude that I'm the problem instead of any self-reflection, there isn't an opportunity to move forward. But yeah, all of the narcissistic experts that I've researched have said that the scapegoat and the golden child becoming close is almost unheard of. So, and the fact that we have a younger brother who sees the family abuse clearly and is in a healing journey as well is another level of it. I think it shows our strength. I think it shows the ability to get through this, and I'm really proud of it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I hope it gives people hope. Because, yeah, like our relationship is so much better now than it ever was.
Yeah.
Ever.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It really is.
Yeah.
Like I didn't expect it, and I'm so grateful for it now.
Yeah.
Like,
sure.
I'm not grateful for what we went through in order to get here. I think we got here in spite of all of that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, we could talk forever.
We could. Maybe we'll do another one.
Yeah. We'll have to come back at a different time with some more stuff. But
yeah.
All right.
Thanks for having me on.
Yes.
Yeah.
It was fun. First
I was nervous,
guest.
but it was fun.
Yeah. All right. So try to step back. Try to be open.
Yeah.
If any of this resonates with you, please hit subscribe. We'd love to hear from any of you. If you share in this experience or if you're struggling with your family relationships. So, you'll have to come back, Val.
Okay. Will do.
All right. Till next time. Bye.